We're on part 4 now of episode 73, and I just split that up because we're having a really good discussion here about who should be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame who hasn't been inducted yet. Now, in the last part, we went over the people that shouldn't have been inducted, namely Coco Beware, and we touched upon the Chris Benoit situation, and we knocked out the celebrities that should be thrown into the Hall of Fame. The two extra categories left are basically we don't need to like separate the two of them. We can just kind of keep them all in one kind of a shot, and that's why I split it up the way that I split it up with here. Posthumous inductions and other people that we want to go into the Hall of Fame. And I'll throw something out here ahead of time. Obviously, there's a lot of people who should go into the Hall of Fame that are still wrestling or I mean, like the people like The Rock and The Undertaker and Triple H, and they're going to go in the Hall of Fame. There's no point in talking about them. This is more so the other people that have retired or moved on, and so on and so forth. I'm going to start with my posthumous inductions, and we might as well start with the big one, Owen Hart. There's really not much to talk about for a lot of these guys. It's essentially the same thing over and over again. They've had great careers, they deserve it, so on and so forth. Owen Hart, obviously, he's in a situation where his family haven't given the rights to do that yet. I really hope that they change their mind. Namely, his wife, I think, is the one who's kind of holding it all up. But he obviously deserves it. People have been clamoring for it for years, and it'll eventually happen.
I mean, I don't want to play a devil's advocate here, but did Owen Hart really have a Hall of Fame worthy career?
Yes, absolutely.
I think that he did.
Yeah, you just got to look at the overall body of work that he did. And this was someone who did absolutely anything that was put in front of him, and he did it well. He was able to play both face and heel early in his career, and he's probably one of the best heels that the WWE had at the time. I know definitely for me growing up in the mid '90s, the whole Brett versus Owen feud of '94 is still one of a landmark feud for me. I still wish in my opinion, he's one of the best guys to never ever win the WWE Championship.
I agree, and I bring this point up a lot to people, and I'll mention it for a lot of the people here. He never won that WWE Championship, but I guarantee you, if they would have had a brand split back then, he would have been world champion.
Oh yeah,
and they probably would have had like champion versus champion with the Hearts.
Oh yeah, it would have been fantastic too. That would have been amazing. Yeah, he always performed really well. I mean, he had his great feuds with Shawn Michaels. He had Jeff Jarrett, but both
Austin had great feuds.
Yeah, the Austin feud. I mean, he pulled off being a part of the Nation of Domination. Like,
yeah,
great guy, really deserves that. And obviously, they would have put him in there, I'm sure, by now if
where this situation with his wife,
right? Yeah, if that would have been a different situation.
Now, if Owen Hart had not had his tragedy, do you think he would have became a world champion?
I think that there's a possibility that he could have, but I don't necessarily think that he would have. I think he might have been one of those people that had the championship for a hot minute, and that's about it.
Well, I mean, the two championship system came 2 years later.
If he would have been around for that, because he could have ended up going to WCW or something weird, and then getting bad blood or anything like that going on. But I guarantee if Owen Hart would have been there with a brand split, he would have been a champion. The same kind of goes for the people like Ted DiBiase and Roddy Piper. They would have been champions for sure. The only reason that they weren't is because they had Hulk Hogan to fight with, and that's it. But yeah, I think it's all a timing thing.
Well, yeah, I absolutely agree.
I also think Owen wasn't champion because the whole heat Brett had with Vince, and I think Vince didn't trust any of the Hart's name.
Yeah, after that whole thing with the screw job, he wouldn't have put the title on Owen for sure.
Well, I disagree. If Owen had stuck around that long, I think he would have seen that Owen was loyal and given him a bone. If not for anything else, than to stick it in Brett's craw.
Yeah, it would have been the same situation with JBL. I mean, like, the guy sticks around for the company long enough. Let's reward him and his career by putting the belt on him.
Well, who knows? Maybe if Owen wouldn't have died, that whole thing with Brett would have blown over one hell of a lot sooner.
Yeah, he would have had a middleman, someone to negotiate for him.
Right. So that makes it a little trickier, but obviously he's on the list. Somebody else I wanted to bring up here, obviously, so I'm going to go through the posthumous inductions. Davey Boy Smith, British Bulldog. Um,
True.
he was a very big staple of WWE for a long time. He had his great feuds too. He was another. He wasn't as much of a company guy as Owen Hart was, but he did stick around, and he.
No, he ping ponged quite a bit.
Well, I mean, like when he was in WWE for those time periods. I mean, he had his problems and everything, and then he jumped over to WCW and all that. But when he did, he was in a similar boat where he wasn't. He never really seemed like he was that guy who bitched and complained and wanted to be the world champion and all that. They had him in
No,
intercontinental feuds. And,
he was a working man. You know, he
right.
showed up for work and he did his best. But I also think he was a man who went where the money was nicest for him.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think Hall of Fame career, and then you got to account too. WCW is included into this, so
Yes,
you know,
although his time in WCW was very negligible.
right. But I mean, what he's done in both companies combined, as Brandon said earlier, the whole body of the work. Bulldog's definitely somebody I would throw in there.
I mean, the match that him and Brett had at WrestleMania
Yeah.
was one of Brett's best, I think.
Couple other people. Big Boss Man. I could see him being in the Hall of Fame. Nobody really.
Maybe like
I don't
a
think
He's
so.
side guy when they got no one else to go in a particular town. Sure.
he's on par with like throwing in. I mean, I would put Hacksaw higher than him, but at the same time, he's not going to be that headliner, of course.
No.
Not by any means. I mean, Big Boss Man, obviously a posthumous induction is never going to be really the headliner anyway, but that would be somebody who they're filling out the card kind of.
Gosh, that's just so weird. Big Boss Man's dead.
Well,
All these
he's
years
not.
later, I still can't get that thought.
That's another person here, Ravishing Rick Rude.
Him, I believe, is dead.
And
I don't know
believe
why
he
that's
really
different,
should be in the
but-
Hall of Fame, too.
Oh, he should. Yes.
Yeah, I think he should.
Oh, I thought you were saying that you didn't think that he should.
No, I absolutely think Ravishing Rick Rude should. He was one of the best heels that they had.
He's another person I could see that they would have given a world title to if they would have had the brand split.
Yeah.
They should have given it to him instead of Warrior.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that one. Paul Bearer, as we talked about a lot when it came to his death recently, it's a shame that they didn't get a chance to induct him beforehand and have that kind of like you do it when you can kind of a thing. But nobody would have seen that coming necessarily. So I don't think they should have rushed it this year. When it first happened, I did have that come through my mind that maybe they could do that, but they've got time, and obviously Undertaker or Kane, somebody's going to end up inducting him down the line, and he deserves it.
CM Punk should induct Paul Bearer into the Hall of Fame this year.
This year?
How can you imagine the reaction that would get from
Jeez.
Madison Square Garden crowd?
I
think I think what the one thing that Paul Bearer had going for him in getting into the Hall of Fame is his death, because I don't think it would have came as soon as it would if he didn't die.
He still would have been deserving, but I don't.
He would have been deserving in there, but it would have
Why
been.
Why is he going in this year? Oh my god.
Yeah, exactly. There's
Right.
not going to
No.
be much gnashing of teeth when he doesn't go in if he's still alive.
right.
I was kind of surprised when Paul Bearer died because he didn't look like he was sick when the last time he was on TV.
Nah, but you never know. I mean, people have problems all the time.
His health's been weird his entire life. I mean, he's struggled with his weight problems, obviously. I think this is just another case of like Eddie Guerrero, where he got past his demons, but it
It
was
all
too
caught up
late
to him.
and they caught up to him. Yeah.
I have two other people on my posthumous induction list, and I'll knock out the one that isn't going to be as talked about, obviously, and that's Bam Bam Bigelow.
Absolutely.
We are in lock stock agreement with that, my friend.
Right.
That man doesn't get anywhere near the exposure he deserves. Not even
Absolutely.
just the Hall of Fame
No.
induction, but like the WWE vignettes and all that. Why is he not shown more?
Even
The
when
most underrated guy that they've had in a while.
even when they talk about the best big men, it's like they kind of like slack to talk about Bam Bam.
He was Brock Lesnar before Brock Lesnar. I mean, there was not guys
That's
his size
very good reference.
doing moves that
Mhm.
guys that are like 250 pounds lighter than him. This was a 350-pound guy that could do a moonsault.
Right. Yeah,
I mean,
he definitely deserves it. And the big one on the posthumous list, Randy Savage.
the beat
Oh,
goes
yeah.
on.
I mean,
Oh yeah.
there's no explanation needed.
No, that and to
whatsoever.
me, the fact that he's not in is one of the greatest injustices, and it's one of the major black marks that the Hall of Fame goes against. You can't take this whole Hall of Fame thing seriously without the Macho Man in it.
Right.
Well,
Um,
didn't his brother say? Not,
Yeah, that's where we get into a little murky over Lanny Poffo has said he if he wanted to do it, he wanted to do the whole thing as a family. That's what Randy would have wanted.
uh,
I think you just got to bite the bullet if that's what what puts him in and that will make people happy. Then put leaping Lanny Poffo in the goddamn Hall of Fame. Whatever.
yeah. If it's, I don't know. Personally, I could not care less if leaping Lanny Poffo ever went in there.
But if that's what it takes to get Randy Savage in the Hall of Fame and to finally have that moment, then fuck it. Let's just do it.
It's not like
Bite
they
the
haven't
bullet.
set that precedent before with
Exactly.
the
Just-
Rock's family going in just to get the Rock to even just make an appearance, let alone
Just bite the
you know,
bullet. Get if that's what it takes to get Hogan to show up to do it too, because there's nobody else I think that can induct that man properly other than Hulk Hogan.
what about Piper? Piper knew him too.
Piper knew him pretty good, but I mean,
You got to go
Piper's
Mega
not
Powers.
synonymous with Hogan. I mean, when you put those two together, that's the foil. That's the nemesis and hero.
And it's that type of thing where if Miss Elizabeth was still alive, you would have gone with her. But not.
does she go in too?
Is she? Is she not in it?
No,
She's not in it.
Oh, she needs to be in it then.
and
But
they've got
do they go in together though?
That would be.
Should.
Yeah, there you go. That would be a good
match made in
duet.
heaven, baby. I mean, look, my friend Tony still says to this day that that's how he wants to get married inside a wrestling ring. Full recreation of the match made in heaven. And then I keep on asking if I could be Jake the Snake Roberts.
Does anybody else have any posthumous inductions? If we
Yeah.
break it up. All right.
Well, I'm sorry, I keep jumping ahead of these. Do you guys have any you want to put in before I do?
No, you go, and then I'll think of something.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, let me think.
I'm going to show my old school fan here. I might even be going way above your guys' heads here. The first one I'll mention, I'm sure you've heard of this man before. His name is Lou Thez.
Luthez Press.
Isn't in it?
No, Lou Thez is not in it. At
Holy
least
shit!
I'm pretty sure he's not. Maybe one of you guys can look that up. And
Let me
correct
double check that real quick. 'Cause
I'm
I
pretty
would have
sure-
thought that he was.
I'm pretty sure Lou Thez is not in there. And this man is pretty much took pro wrestling from what it was and made it into closer, like, guys just rolling around on the ground doing random moves, and made it into the performance that we know it as now. And of course, it took Hulk Hogan to bring it to that mainstream appeal. But what we look at and call wrestling today really originated with Lou Thez.
Yeah, you're right. Luthez is not in it. Yeah, guaranteed it should be in it. What the hell? Holy shit! Luthez.
I think it's just one of those things where he's just one of those old school guys, and I don't know why he's not in there, especially when he died. I couldn't believe he didn't go in at that point.
I mean, the guy has a move named after him.
Right.
Is it possible that Vince doesn't think kids would know who he is, and maybe that's why?
Well, they don't know who a lot of these
You haven't
people
seen
are.
them. Well, no, you haven't seen them do one of those like really old school people in a while. Like
Yeah.
the last one I remember them doing was like
Moolah or Mae Young, probably.
Well,
yeah, something like that.
well, they in 2011 Bullet Bob Armstrong. How many people
Yeah.
really are that aware of him that are watching WWE right now?
But at least they were able to make the connection that it was Road Dogg's father.
Yeah.
So at least they could have won. But yeah, I guess that. But I'm saying like really old generation. I mean like 50s and 60s generation.
Gorgeous George,
Oh, they did do Gorgeous Short. You're right. You got me
2010. Mad Dog Vachon.
there. Okay, well you
Yeah.
got me there. Well, regardless, he is someone who belongs in there.
Yeah, guaranteed.
And actually, I thought of another name before I do my final name. Mildred Burke. I don't know if you guys even know who Mildred Burke is.
Doesn't sound familiar.
No, that doesn't ring a bell.
I recently watched a documentary on Netflix that I recommend any wrestling fan watching. It's called Lipstick and Dynamite. I believe that's the name of it, but it's a documentary about the golden era of women's wrestling through the 50s to the 70s. Essentially, when Moolah came into the play and made her big run, it was a documentary of women's wrestling at that point. Really, really interesting. But if you watch that, you'll become a big fan of Mildred Burke and her importance to the industry. I mean, Moolah is credited as being the big women's wrestler, but a lot of that is due to the work of Mildred Burke. So I'll put her name in there. And this last one, Frank Gotch.
Yes.
Frank Gotch is the father of professional wrestling. He is the first world heavyweight champion ever. This man should have been one of the early contenders for Hall of Fame, and the fact that he's not in there is just rather atrocious.
Good names.
And once again, how can you take a Hall of Fame seriously and not have Lou Thesz, Randy Savage, or Frank Gotch in there?
Yeah. Fully agreed. Jeff and Brandon, what do you guys got? Anything different or
I'm really just trying to think of guys right now.
Me too.
Well, you know what? We can always jump
Just-
back. Let's
just
talk
woke
about
up.
people who haven't died yet, who could be a part of it. First thing that comes to my mind, obviously Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
Um,
He's
ideally,
got to die first.
But that would be like inducting himself, wouldn't it?
oh no,
Yeah,
he'd have to
he
have.
needs to die first, and it's got to be Stephanie doing it.
I think they induct Mr. McMahon. Not Vince McMahon, you induct Mr. McMahon as a character. I think that's how it would have to be.
I'm saying right now, either he goes in next year because it's WrestleMania 30, or they wait until he's dead. It's one or the other. It's not going to be, WrestleMania 34 or something like that. It's next year or posthumous induction for him.
Well, I just want to say, I'm sorry, Brand. I really got to disagree with what you're saying. They really try to make the Hall of Fame as serious as possible with those kind of things. I'm pretty sure they would put in Vince McMahon, not Mr. McMahon, especially after putting in his father. Vince McMahon has gone through great lengths to really make the Hall of Fame night not about him.
Yeah.
If you notice, I'm pretty sure he's never even made a single appearance at it. They don't even show him in the audience or anything.
He inducted Austin.
He did induct Austin. You are right.
Yeah, but he really steps back.
That made sense, though. It made sense for him to induct Austin. There really was no better person to induct Austin except for maybe Rock, who was nowhere to be seen at that point.
Or Jim Ross.
Or Jim Ross, yeah. Jim Ross.
But it was Vince McMahon. I mean, no comparison.
I got somebody who absolutely I think should be in because of everything that they have done throughout their career. Diamond Dallas Page.
Oh, absolutely.
DDP makes sense.
I mean, he had a remarkable, I couldn't say remarkable career because he got started so late, but when WCW, he was a driving force in WCW, and even his WWE stuff was great. And, if you want to talk about outside the ring, this is a guy who's saving people's lives.
And
I would have a dream next year at the Hall of Fame of seeing DDP, Jake the Snake Roberts, and Scott Hall going into the Hall of Fame as a team.
That was another name I was going to drop. I mean, Jake the Snake Roberts cut some of the best promos of his era. I mean,
and he could have been another champion too if the brand split would have happened, possibly.
Absolutely. If they had another second title, like a U.S. title, he could have been a multiple-time United States champion.
Right. I actually have both Jake Roberts and Scott Hall on my list too because it's tentative depending upon their well-being, but at the same time, both of those do obviously deserve Hall of Fame inductions.
I don't know about Scott because of how he acted later in his years and stuff.
But if you look at his NWA and WCW,
he never did anything that I think was offensive to the levels where it should diminish his career. I mean, yeah, we just set that precedent earlier with Chris Benoit, but this is far from the levels of Chris Benoit.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Benoit. I mean, the only thing that Scott Hall did was damage to himself. He didn't, kill anybody.
And
although honestly, he actually did kill somebody. He actually did kill somebody in his old.
He killed somebody at a nightclub.
Yeah, way back in the day.
That's a little different though from
yes, of course.
And Chris Benoit never really had a company put on his shoulders. Scott Hall, he didn't have it put on his sole shoulders, but there was a period of time where him, Nash, and Hogan, those were the guys running WCW.
They were the hottest thing in wrestling. They were the hottest thing that wrestling. NWO was the hottest thing in wrestling since Hulkamania, probably.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Nash is another one. He needs to go into the Hall of Fame eventually.
And absolutely he will.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of time.
Exactly. And that kind of applies to both of the New Age Outlaws.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I totally agree with that.
And they should go in. Either they go in as the DX thing that we've talked about before, or they go in as the New Age Outlaws. Personally, I'd rather them go in as the Outlaws.
Yeah, me too.
I'm
not really a fan of the stables going in. I get the Four Horsemen, but I have no interest in seeing a DX or an NWO or an Evolution induction. That's unnecessary.
I agree.
But if they do the NWO, they have to induct everybody.
Induction.
Yeah,
They
they
have
do
to
NWO. They
have
have
to-
to have like 50 people on stage. Get like Scotty Riggs,
Buff Bagwell,
Buff-
fucking
Forrest Hogan.
Virgil or Vincent, as he was.
It's the
They're
only
gonna
way
have to
Virgil coming
invite
close.
Sting to come too because he was part of the NWO too.
Oh.
Scott Steiner. Like, you gotta get the whole gang up there.
Well, there's two other people that we just mentioned here. That also includes Sean Waltman. I think that he should go into the Hall of Fame eventually. He's somebody they can wait a while for, but he should go in. And he's obviously not a headliner. And at the same time, the Steiner brothers. You're not going to get Rick Steiner on his own. So you either do the Steiner brothers or you do Scott. Now he's got his problems and he's got his
Scott's
detractors.
way too much of a loose cannon right now. They could
Right.
they could not put him on a Hall of Fame stage.
They could.
He'll just
They
go
could
on
wait
his
and do a
tantrum on
posthumous
the mic.
edition.
I think they could because it would be television gold. They might have to subtitle his speech, but
Yeah, his.
I think 131 and 2/3% that he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
He's somebody who would have a fantastic acceptance speech, and so would Psycho Sid.
I have a question. Wait. Before we move to Psycho Sid, I have a question. Should WWE take a wrestler's time in other organizations that they don't own into consideration when putting them into the Hall of Fame?
I've never really thought that. I've always
I
thought
think
it
so.
should be WWE itself, but they clearly do. So, to me, if you're doing a WWE Hall of Fame, it should be a WWE Hall of Fame. You shouldn't be talking about, oh, this guy was such a big legend in NWA and all that other kind of stuff.
So you're saying Abdul the
Does
Butcher should not be in?
own NWA or owned a part of NWA at one point?
Yeah, it's somebody like an Abdul the Butcher. To me, if you go with that route, obviously they haven't, so that's why I give them that leniency. But if they would have said right off the bat, this is strictly, WWF, WWF, WWE, then you never throw in people like that.
Well, I don't think that. I think they really try to also kind of put it that it's a wrestling Hall of Fame in general.
Right.
But I mean, he wrestled in territories that are now under the WWF banner, so it in a lot of ways it does still fit that. But what I'm asking is, what about their time in organizations like TNA or even a Ring of Honor or other independents?
I think that the way that they operate is that they would say something like he is a multiple time world champion or something.
Has anybody seen CM Punk's newest DVD?
No, I haven't.
You've seen it, right,
World?
Brandon?
Yeah, the Best in the World DVD. Yes.
How do they treat his time in Ring of Honor? I'm told they actually go rather in depth on it.
They do, and then they actually even have bonus material about it where he talks about how he basically just says how Ring of Honor helped him learn about stuff outside of the ring too, as well as to help book a show, as well as in the ring aspect. They don't really delve headlong into it. I mean, they mention a little bit of his friendship with Chris Hero. Obviously, Colt Cabana's in it. But not very many other references other than that. Gabe Sapolsky does not make an appearance at all.
Colt Cabana, who is this? We're talking about Scotty Goldman.
Well, I was gonna ask, did they even make note of the other people that it's made, like Daniel Bryan?
No, they mentioned his matches with Samoa Joe, but they don't have any of those matches on the DVD, which I was kind of disappointed about. But I understand why they don't own that content. Because I think the matches that Punk had with Kenta and Joe and Daniel Bryan, classic matches.
Well, getting back to Sid, multiple time champion, has his big moments in wrestling and all that.
Headline 2 WrestleManias. Yeah,
there you go. I mean, he obviously deserves it. One interesting thing, what do you think that he would go in as? Do you think he'd go in as Psycho Sid or Sid Justice or just Sid?
I think he would just go in as Sid.
Yeah,
I think he would go under Psycho Sid because that's when he got his most fame.
They might go.
He headlined WrestleMania against Hulk Hogan as Sid Vicious or Sid Justice or whatever he was at the time.
Sid Justice at the time, but they might go with Sid Udy.
Yeah.
They might just deduct the man because there's too many characters to really go in there. That would be an excellent Hall of Fame speech.
Oh, it probably would make no sense.
It would probably make no sense, and then I'd love to see him say, "Can we do that again?"
Yeah.
Sid, we're live.
And then while walking off stage, he'd break his leg.
He'd break his ankle.
It'd be like, it's great to be in a class with all these people that have half the wrestling talent that I do, and I have half the brain that they do, and pull another one of those things.
And I am the master and the ruler of the world.
I want him to end that Hall of Fame speech on that.
Yeah, I mean that would be great.
Ultimate Warrior.
I think a Hall of Fame a class induction with him, Scott Steiner, and that's the greatest. That's pure television gold right there.
That would be one I'd have to buy.
I would
Uh,
DVR that.
and the same with Ultimate Warrior.
Yes.
Nah.
Well, okay. When you really look at Warrior's career as a whole, let's get a little murky. I could see them doing it if he ever, comes to terms with them, but I don't think they're going to make that move. They're not going to come to him. He's got to come to them.
Yeah, I can see that.
Well, he's already said he's not going to go back. He already basically said he doesn't trust Vince or.
And I'm
Right.
fine with that.
Some other people here, JBL.
Yeah, I guess.
Christian.
Yeah.
He's still kind of a performer at this point. Christian is not even in the talks right now. He's still a full-time performer when he's not injured. But JBL is still on TV doing the announcer thing. I would wait a little bit longer before putting JBL in.
I would wait too, but at the same time, if they can induct Booker T this year, I can see them throwing him in sooner than
Well,
they
I
need
think
to.
it's a mistake putting Booker T in this year.
I agree.
Not saying he's not deserving, but
No, they can wait.
Same reasoning.
They can wait.
It was special when you put in Ric Flair because he was still a performer. It was special when you put in Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler when they were still active performers.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're just putting in Booker T. You put in Edge the year after you retire. Like it's
I prefer when people age a little bit more.
But Edge deserved it, I think.
Kind of like the way
he deserved it, but he could have waited 5 years for it.
Yeah, they could have waited until they might actually do one in Toronto again and had him as the main headliner or something. Lex Luger.
Mm-hmm.
Between WCW, especially WCW, his time period there.
Oh, you weren't a fan of the Lex Express?
Well, I mean, he kind of did more in WCW than he did in WWE.
Absolutely. I mean, he was the before Sting came and did his thing. He was the main guy heading the charge of WCW against the NWO.
Yeah. King Kong Bundy, somebody who I think is.
Yeah. I mean, once
Worthy of a
again,
spot.
I think he's a little bit before my generation. But he did headline WrestleMania 2. He is a very well-known character. I mean, when you talk to people who watched wrestling from the 80s, one of the people they definitely remember, even though he's bland as shit with his bald head and his black singlet, people remember King Kong Bundy.
You know who's
It was
actually
a simpler time.
You know who's actually like a really kind of like charismatic guy? His brother. He has two brothers, I think, and both of them are in the school system that I grew up in. I actually had his brother for a gym teacher for 7 years. And he is this huge guy who is one of the most charismatic people I've ever met in my life. Really odd, but and I actually didn't find out that he was related to King Kong Bundy until I don't know, a couple years into him already being my teacher. But yeah, I always saw King Kong Bundy. I mean, he you don't headline the second WrestleMania against Hulk Hogan and not at least get talked about a little bit for that kind of a thing, you know? There's some people that I wanted to throw out there that aren't obviously like as huge names as like a Lex Luger and all that. The model Rick Martel. I could see him being kind of like a mid-carder version of it. Kind of like a Tito Santana and, you know.
Yeah, if you're going to induct Tito Santana, you really have to induct Rick Martel because they're two guys that are absolutely share the same kind of career arc. Never really achieved superstar level, but always did great work.
Right. You're never going to have somebody who's a wrestling fan. You go, the model Rick Martel, and they go, who the hell's that?
Who?
Right. So
You have to say the guy who came out with the Atomizer.
yeah. And the same kind of applies to people like Goldust and Finley. They can wait a while.
Goldust is absolutely deserving.
Yeah, they can wait a while. They don't need to go in right now, but they're definitely kind of like on that undercard of the Hall of Fame. And they shouldn't really be much of a discussion as to why they should. I mean, to another extent, Rikishi. He shouldn't go in as half of the head shrinkers though. He has to go in as Rikishi. But he was there for such a long.
Of course, he would go in as Rikishi. Are you kidding?
Right, but I mean,
why would the head shrinkers go in?
But they can't bring in. We talked about that with like the Steiner brothers and inducting Macho Man and Miss Elizabeth and all that. You can't do that with.
Let's put in Deuce and Domino.
Yeah,
dude. Cliff Compton have you listened to Cliff Compton's promos? He's a fucking genius in the ring.
Why did they induct Stevie Ray? Like, induct the whole Harlem Heat together?
Because he's Stevie Ray.
Is he Stevie Ray?
Yeah, he's.
If I recall correctly, there's actually some like heat between Stevie Ray and Booker T right now. They're not on speaking terms.
Oh, I thought that he was supposed to be inducting him.
Yeah.
Did they announce that?
I thought that they did.
It's like on the internet.
It's his.
Oh, well,
they're
then it must be
they're
true.
actually brothers.
They are actually. Yeah, well, families fight.
Yeah.
Uh,
What are some other people here that I have down? The Honky Tonk Man,
Absolutely.
longest reigning Intercontinental Champion of all time, needs to be in it. Harvey Whippleman. You got to give some managers some love too, and even though he was.
Yeah, well, let's do Jim Cornette first, please.
yeah, let's put Cornette. Maybe I'd even put Johnny Polo above
Yeah, maybe Paul Heyman for sure.
Paul
Yeah.
Heyman. Absolutely.
I see. I didn't include
Taboo.
because he's doing that whole kind of thing now. The reason I didn't mention Cornette yet is mostly because he badmouths constantly. I mean, that's going to be a tough issue. It's kind of like an Ultimate Warrior thing where it's going to be a while before we see Cornette in there, but he definitely does deserve it. Absolutely. Vader, I think he deserves to be in the WWE Hall of Fame, mostly for his WCW time, of course.
Yeah, I will absolutely back you on that one, 100%.
Jim the Anvil Neidhart. He is
Eh,
one I mistakenly put down in the posthumous section when I was real tired.
I realize he's not dead yet.
Right.
I'm gonna say if you're gonna put him in, you have to put him in as a member of the Hart Foundation.
Right.
I mean, his singles career was, irrelevant.
What they could do, I could see them doing, is taking advantage of that group situation and having Jim the Anvil in there in the Hart Foundation kind of a thing, and then also including British Bulldog in there.
Yeah.
And kind of ignoring the fact that it's like a posthumous induction and all that.
You could put Brian Pillman in the same time too. I think Brian Pillman should be at least in that consideration.
I only have a couple other people that I have on this list, and those are Lita. Now that Trish is going in, obviously she's one of their higher profile divas that can go in after her at some point. Doesn't need to be right now, but later on it'll happen.
Yeah, I'm not clamoring for Lita to go in, especially if I have to hear that.
Because you don't want to hear the theme song. That's what it is.
I
Lita,
do not.
Lita can wait.
She can wait a while.
I mean, it will especially happen now that her and Punk are still together. He'll use his stroke.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
More importantly, I would say Alundra Blaze, aka Medusa.
Absolutely.
She needs.
I think she deserves to go in, but it'll be one of those things that it's going to take the mountain coming to Mohammed, because I'm sure Vince still has a little bit chapped that she went on Nitro and threw the belt in the garbage.
Yeah.
I think that's like the ultimate sign of disrespect in the wrestling business. So it'll take someone's going to have to come to Jesus, basically.
That's mostly like the list that I had. I mean, there's obviously more people, and you guys can throw out some other names here too about some other ones that I didn't touch upon yet. If you have any more, I mean, it's a pretty long list.
Yeah, wow, you pretty much span the gamut, really.
And actually, I'm going to step in here. It's a post-production kind of a thing. I'm going to break this up one more time. I really, I talked a lot longer than I actually thought I was going to. I just rambled a little bit about certain things. But the rest of it that we're going to pick up on in the third part of this Hall of Fame talk, we'll talk about what the other three members of this panel, what their suggestions were, and we're going to kind of backtrack a little bit and all that other kind of stuff. But check out part 5 of episode 73 coming your way.